There's a sound inside you right now that you've been ignoring your entire life, not because it's silent, but because it's buried under everything the world taught you to hear instead. And here's the secret. That forgotten sound is the only thing that's truly yours. Long before you had a name, before thoughts, before language, there was vibration. A resonance humming quietly in the background of your being, shaping how you feel, how you move, and what you believe is possible. This isn't poetry. It's physics your ancestors understood, but your education erased. Imagine for a second that every thought you've had, every emotion, every sensation, wasn't just happening inside you. It was happening through you. Because you're not a container, you're a conductor, and the signal you're tuned to determines the reality you live in. Ancient civilizations didn't guess at this. They built their entire lives around it. The temples they designed, the mantras they repeated, the tones they passed down through breath and bone, those weren't rituals. They were alignment tools, tuning forks for the soul. Somewhere in your cells, in the memory of your blood, that knowledge still exists. And once you remember how to access it, something profound happens. Your reality begins to echo it back, not symbolically, literally. You start to feel places that vibrate with you, words that activate you, people that ring true like a bell. And just like that, the static of the world starts to fall away. Not all at once, but enough for you to start hearing again. Not with your ears, with your entire being. That's where we begin. Because the sound inside you isn't just yours, it's you. And it's time to remember how to listen. The problem is, we've been trained to hear everything except ourselves. From the moment we enter the world, we're given a frequency to follow, a voice, a language, a rhythm not our own. And little by little, we forget the original tone. We replace it with noise, cultural noise, educational noise, emotional noise, until what once vibrated clearly like a crystal tuning fork now barely hums beneath the surface. And yet, that sound, the one you forgot, never stopped. It's been waiting, echoing through the chambers of your subconscious, vibrating behind your heartbeat, flickering at the edge of every dream you half remember. You feel it sometimes, don't you? That low hum behind moments of silence, that sudden wave of emotion when a piece of music hits you in just the right spot. That isn't coincidence. It's not nostalgia. It's a resonance event. A moment where your internal frequency brushes up against something that matches it, and for a split second, you remember who you were before the forgetting. Ancient wisdom keepers knew this. They didn't teach with lectures. They taught with sound, with breath, with rhythm, because they understood that the body isn't just a vessel, it's an instrument, one capable of holding and transmitting precise codes of awareness. That's why certain chants make your skin crawl. That's why certain tones make you cry without warning, because something buried deep recognizes the signal. And that signal, when sustained, begins to do something remarkable. It reorganizes you, not metaphorically, literally. The brain shifts, the heart entrains, the nervous system settles into coherence, and that's when you become more than just a listener. You become a resonator, a bridge, a portal. Not because you force it, but because you stop resisting your own frequency. That's the key. Not volume, not complexity, alignment. Because when you align with the original tone, the one buried beneath trauma, programming, and performance, you don't just remember who you are. You remember what you are, a field, a rhythm, a pulse in the fabric of existence itself. And in that realization, something ancient unlocks. The kind of unlocking that shifts timelines without warning, that bends probability, that causes synchronicity to explode around you like sparks off a live wire. This isn't magic, it's acoustics, it's vibration. And once you start vibrating differently, reality has no choice but to respond. The ancients weren't trying to impress gods with chants. They were tuning the human instrument to a field most people forgot was even real. Because every frequency doesn't just carry sound, it carries intelligence. And when your body, your breath, your emotion align with a specific tone, you're not just making sound, you're opening an encrypted channel. This is how the old masters traveled without moving, how they received knowledge without books, how they saw beyond the veil without dying. They didn't wait for answers to come from the outside. They activated their internal resonance, and the answers began appearing everywhere. Because once your frequency shifts, reality becomes responsive. Mirrors, symbols, repeating numbers. Conversations that feel like they're speaking directly to the question you never asked aloud. The world starts echoing you back to yourself. But most people miss it, because they're trying to make something happen. And this isn't about effort, it's about clarity. If your field is full of static, mental chatter, suppressed emotion, borrowed belief systems, then the resonance can't move cleanly. But when you clear the field, when you sit in stillness long enough to hear the sound behind the silence, something clicks. You don't just hear it, you feel it. Not with your ears, but with your skin, your breath, your spine. You feel like something is humming through you, and you're not imagining it. That's coherence, that's contact. And the more you stay there, the more the veil thins, not with drama, with precision, like the difference between static and signal, like remembering how to speak a language you didn't know you knew. And in those moments you realize the ancient sound codes were never just about unlocking external portals. They were about restoring the internal ones, the ones that let you see energy, feel timelines, read vibration like language. And that's not the future, that's your birthright. You were wired for this. You just forgot how to tune. You've been taught to listen with your ears, but sound doesn't begin or end there. Real sound is felt, in the chest, in the gut, in the electric field that surrounds your body and responds faster than your nervous system ever could. That's why the ancients built temples shaped like amplifiers, domes, chambers, stone walls engineered not for beauty, but for vibration. When a tone was chanted inside them, it didn't just bounce off walls, it traveled through dimensions. These weren't buildings, they were instruments. And when used properly, they activated what we now call non-local awareness, the ability to perceive beyond the senses. We try to replicate this today with technology, with machines, with apps. But what if the original technology was sound? What if your body was designed to be a living transmitter, a receptor of information that isn't bound by space or time? And what if the codes still exist? Not in ancient ruins, but in your DNA. Because here's the truth most never hear. You are built from sound. Your cells vibrate, your atoms oscillate. The pulse in your veins is not random, it's rhythm. And rhythm is a form of memory, a form of signal, a form of access. That's why certain sounds make you cry without knowing why. Why certain tones drop you into a state where time dissolves and your body forgets tension. It's not just music, it's memory. Not from this life, from before. From other layers of self that existed before language, before identity. And when you hit the right frequency, those versions wake up. Not metaphorically, energetically. They stir. They begin to rise through your field, not to haunt you, but to remind you who you were, what you knew, what you could do when you stopped identifying with limitation. That's what the codes were always for. Not power, not performance. Access, resonance with the original design of reality. And when you're in it, everything changes. Not because you imagined it, but because you finally remembered how to listen. Some sounds don't need to be heard to be felt. That high-pitched frequency you sometimes notice in total silence. It's not your ears malfunctioning, it's your field picking up on a signal. A thin vibration brushing up against your awareness, like a memory surfacing from beneath the static of everyday life. Modern science calls it tinnitus. The ancients called it the call. A resonance from the other side of the veil, signaling alignment. It happens most often when your mind is still, just before sleep, just after waking, or in deep meditation. These moments of internal quiet strip away the clutter of mental noise and open the gateway for frequency to land. And what lands isn't random, it's tailored to you, your history, your field, your encoded pattern, because everyone carries a unique frequency signature, like a soul fingerprint. And when that internal tone is matched by an external sound, even subtly, something activates. The field begins to pulse. Memory ignites, not memory of events, but of states, states of coherence, of alignment, of purity. This is why certain chants and tones are considered sacred. They don't tell stories. They trigger states. They bypass the mind entirely and go straight to the architecture underneath. That's why ancient sound codes were never meant to be understood intellectually. They were meant to be embodied, spoken not just with the mouth, but with the breath, the bones, the field. You don't chant them, you become them. And once you do, you stop hearing sound as decoration. You start experiencing it as transformation. Sound doesn't inform, it transforms. If it doesn't change you, it wasn't real sound, it was noise. And the reason most people never experience the shift is because they don't listen with their whole being. They perform, they analyze, they imitate. But the sound that opens portals only moves through presence, through surrender, through vibration that's lived. And that's why the ancients could walk between worlds, because they remembered how to resonate with the language of creation itself. In ancient temples, the walls weren't just stone, they were instruments. Each arch, each corridor was calibrated to resonate with specific tones, not for beauty, for activation. The moment a certain chant was voiced, the room would come alive, not metaphorically, but literally. The air would thicken, the body would buzz, space would bend ever so slightly, as if acknowledging the sound. These chambers weren't built for worship, they were built for alignment. Resonance chambers designed to amplify internal frequency through external structure. And that design wasn't arbitrary, it was based on something called sacred geometry. The ratios, the angles, the curves, all of them mirror the harmonic patterns found in sound frequencies, because geometry is sound, frozen in space, and when sound moves through that geometry, it doesn't just echo, it activates. That's what the ancients understood. They weren't primitive mystics humming into stone, they were engineers of energy, tuning space itself to respond to frequency, because they knew what we forgot, that the universe doesn't speak in language, it speaks in resonance. And when your frequency aligns with the structure of the temple, or the pattern in a crop circle, or the vibration in a piece of music, reality responds, not with fireworks, but with shift, subtle, undeniable, a moment where you feel the boundary between me and everything dissolve. And in that moment, you don't just understand, you remember. You remember that you've been here before, not in this body maybe, but in this frequency, this pattern, this tone. And that memory isn't stored in the brain, it's stored in the field, which means every sound you generate, every vibration you embody is like striking a tuning fork inside your soul. If the tone is clear, your field responds. If the tone is true, the space responds. And if both align at once, body and world vibrating as one, you don't just hear the sacred, you become it. There's a moment in deep resonance where the sound stops feeling external. It moves through you like breath, like memory, like something you always knew but forgot how to feel. And that moment isn't subtle, it's transformative. You don't just feel calm or centered, you feel rearranged, like something ancient inside your structure is clicking back into place. That's because sound isn't just energy, it's instruction, and your body, your field, your consciousness knows how to read it, not with logic, but with vibration. This is why the same tone can move people to tears, or bring sudden clarity, or dissolve fear without a single word, because it bypasses the mind. It speaks to the parts of you the mind can't reach, the soul, the cellular memory, the multi-dimensional aspect of you that never forgot where you came from. This is why the sacred tones aren't about entertainment. They're about remembrance, realignment, and every time you sit in stillness, close your eyes and let the tone rise, not from the throat, but from the silence between thoughts. You're not chanting, you're opening to the current that runs underneath all form, the hum behind the stars, the frequency of origin. And when you hit it, when your tone matches the field, you don't just hear something, you are something. A note in the symphony of consciousness, a harmonic thread woven into the fabric of reality. And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. The boundary between the physical and the energetic begins to shimmer, not vanish, not explode, but shimmer, like a veil gently lifting, just enough for you to sense what's on the other side. A presence, a pattern, a pulse that mirrors your own. You realize that the space around you is not empty. It's aware, it's listening, and it's been waiting for you to remember how to speak its language, not with words, with resonance, with the sound you were born to carry, the sound that unlocks the part of you that was never really separate to begin with. Once you cross into this resonance, things don't just sound different, they move differently. Time, perception, even the air itself begins to respond to the vibration you carry, and not in obvious ways. It's subtle. The way a conversation suddenly unfolds with strange synchronicity, the way your dreams become more vivid, more coherent, the way you notice patterns in nature, in sound, in silence. You've entered what the ancients might have called a vibrational corridor, a state where your frequency is not just aligned, but magnetic. And this is where the true shift begins, not in what you do, but in what you no longer need to force. Reality becomes more responsive. You think less, and yet understand more. You plan less, and yet things unfold in alignment, because you're not moving from willpower, you're moving from coherence. This is why the ancient initiates didn't just study texts, they studied tone. They tuned their bodies like instruments, knowing that only when they became harmonic could they perceive the realms that were always present, just hidden behind the noise. And you're doing the same. Each tone you hum, each silence you hold is a recalibration, a re-entry into the deeper design. And that design is intelligent. It knows you. It recognizes your signal when it returns to its original pitch. That's when doors open. Not because you found a key, but because you remembered you are the key. The sound was never separate from you. It was never something you had to seek. It was always something you had to allow. And now, as the frequency deepens, you feel the field shift again, not dramatically, but decisively, as if something unseen nods in recognition. You're in the current now, and the current isn't taking you somewhere. It's revealing where you already are. That's the great irony. The portal you've been searching for isn't a place, it's a state, and you've just stepped inside it. And once you're inside that state, nothing outside needs to change, because everything inside already has. The noise that used to distract you now feels distant, like an echo from another version of you. The rush, the doubt, the need to explain yourself, it fades. Not because you've solved it, but because it's no longer vibrating at your frequency. You start to understand why the mystics spoke in riddles, why the sages spent years in silence. It wasn't to escape the world, it was to hear it more clearly. Because when your inner field is tuned, even the wind carries meaning. Even the pause in a sentence can feel like a revelation. You realize the universe has always been speaking. You were just too out of tune to hear it. And now that you can, you don't just hear more, you feel more. The space between moments, the rhythm behind events, the subtle pull of something guiding you, not with commands, but with resonance. That's the true language of reality, not words, not images, vibration. And when your field stabilizes in this new tone, you begin to attract a different reflection from the world. People respond differently. Opportunities emerge with less friction. Synchronicities pile up not because they're new, but because now you're aligned enough to notice them. And this is the secret the ancients encoded in every chant, every hymn, every sacred tone carved into stone. You don't chase transformation. You become available to it. You don't manipulate reality. You harmonize with it. And when you do, it bends. Not to your will, but to your frequency. This is not magic. This is the original architecture of being. The blueprint you carry in your bones, your breath, your heartbeat. It was never lost, only silenced. And now, it's awake. So if something inside you stirred while watching this, if a part of you felt a vibration you couldn't quite explain, Don't let it slip away. Tell me what you felt, what it reminded you of. What sound or silence cracked something open in you? Drop it in the comments, not just for me, but for everyone still tuning in, still searching for the signal that tells them, you're not alone, you're already vibrating. Now let the world feel it.